It is now a couple of weeks after Easter, and we are still talking about the resurrection appearances of Jesus. And in case you haven't read all four Gospels, we've not even read all of the stories because there are so many of them. So here we are talking yet again about what Jesus is up to after his crucifixion, after his death, after his 3 days in the tomb. We're talking about what he's up to post-resurrection, post the women encountering the empty tomb that we hear about on Easter. And today we have a scarred and hungry Jesus approaching his disciples. And as with our story last week, Jesus has to remind the disciples that he comes in peace, to be not afraid. Because if you remember, he's died. And yet there he is in front of them in some form or other. And so reminding them that there's peace is probably important so that they don't run away screaming, right? But Jesus keeps showing up to the disciples, to the ones whose ordinary lives were tax collecting and fishing or whatever it was, the lives that Jesus in his life had transformed from ordinary to those following and learning about Jesus. He keeps showing up to the disciples who had bailed on him completely in those final hours as he was headed to the cross. He keeps showing up to them when they're hiding in a locked room. He keeps showing up when they don't get it right and when they still see his hands and feet and they're still not sure. Jesus keeps showing up. And in our story today, Jesus once again shows the disciples his hands and his feet. The ones that would have had holes in them from the crucifixion, the very hands that at one time would have shared meals with them, that Peter's would have washed his feet, that he would have taught and preached and protested with. And now it's those scarred hands and feet that is sort of nudging these disciples, these still very reluctant disciples, forward. And Jesus keeps showing up, and today is hungry. Now, in a culture in which hospitality is super important, the disciples seem to have forgotten all manners completely and failed to invite him to share some food, which was the utmost important thing. When someone showed up into your presence, you offered them something to eat and drink. And instead, Jesus has to say, "Do you have anything to eat?" He's given some fish. But more important, that sign of hospitality is a reminder that he is welcome. The door to companionship is open, and he is able to have a conversation with the disciples once again. And Jesus keeps showing up, this time to remind them. To remind them of everything he had taught them all along, that he was going to die and was going to rise, and that everything he had taught them about preaching about God's love, about forgiving sins, they should keep doing that. He had to remind them because they forgot. Jesus keeps showing up, and this time tells them, "You are witnesses." That day when they shared the broiled fish, you are witnesses. Witnesses to the resurrection. And everyone who hears this story, we are witnesses. The Reverend Caroline Lewis says, "Witnessing is not voluntary, but a state of being." So whether we believe it or not, we are witnesses. Whether we like it or not, we are witnesses. The question is not, are we witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus. The question is, do we live as witnesses? The Reverend Nadia Bolz-Weber says the Christian faith, while wildly misrepresented in much of American culture, is really about death and resurrection. It's about how God continues to reach into the graves that we dig for ourselves and pull us out, giving us new life in ways both dramatic and small. How then are we witnesses to not only the resurrection of Jesus, but perhaps more importantly, to the ongoing work of resurrection around us and in us? Perhaps in your life you've noticed a time or two when new life seems to emerge out of what, for lack of a better word, is the crappiest of situations. God doesn't want us to have awfulness, but God does pull us out of death into new life. Perhaps you or someone you love has experienced the remarkable work of AA or NA or other addiction support, God pulling folks out of death and into new life. Perhaps you or someone you know has experienced a door closing to something that is extraordinarily painful, only to have a new door emerge. New life emerge. God is always working at resurrection, as Bolz-Weber says, pulling us out of graves that we've dug for ourselves and giving us new life. The resurrection isn't just about Jesus' post-tomb appearance, but it's about here and now. It's an ongoing occurrence. And friends, we are called to be participants in this resurrection. Debbie Thomas, in her blog, Journey with Jesus, raises the question, what if practicing hospitality is practicing resurrection? As the disciples offered that fish when prompted by Jesus, what if us offering food, us offering a safe place of welcome for all people, no matter where they are on their faith journey, is witnessing to and offering resurrection? What if offering unconditional love, as Jesus did, is witnessing to and offering resurrection? What if inviting others to church like ours, where no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here? What if that is witnessing to and offering resurrection? What if we live as witnesses to the love of Jesus and offer resurrection, as the poem that Inez Campbell shared with me from a book by Joan England, who she used to read to her children, puts it in this way? Love starts in little ways. It may begin the day we first share our thoughts with someone else or help someone in need. Or sometimes it begins because even without words, we understand how someone feels. Love comes quietly, but you know when it is there because suddenly you are not alone anymore, and there is no sadness inside of you. Love is a happy feeling that stays in your heart for the rest of your life. What if we are, as Joyce Rupp said in her Easter Challenge poem, open to the unexpected, to believe beyond our security, to welcome God in every form? What if we show up for others as Jesus showed up? What if we live as witnesses? What if we remind folks around us that God is continually offering resurrection, new life to us here and now. Imagine what that world would look like. Friends, you are witnesses. Claim it. You are participants in the ongoing resurrection in our world. Live it. Thanks be to God. Amen.